Welcome, dear friends. Welcome again to this closing plenary, this time of the 2020 POLIS conference. We hope that the past days have been inspiring for you and that technology was gentle with you. And this plenary session, Green Dealing for Green Healing, will draw the POLIS conference to a close. We will discuss the need for a green recovery from the current health crisis. We can and should not compromise on the EU's Green Deal targets because of COVID-19. We will also discuss the role of innovation in helping us reach our ambitious policy goals. Over the past years, many transport innovations have been coming our way in cities, all at the same time and all at a very fast pace, and some more disruptive than others. Now, how to strike the right balance between regulating innovation to make sure it is aligned with policy goals and allowing innovation to thrive? How to engage in public-private partnerships that benefit both public and private interests and work towards the common goal of more sustainable urban mobility. How to make urban mobility deliver its part for the European Green Deal, and how to contribute to the upcoming European Smart and Sustainable Mobility Strategy. Who could better set the scene for the scope of this session than European Transport Commissioner herself, Mrs. Adina Vălean. Madam Commissioner, we are very honored and grateful to have you with us today, and the floor is fully yours now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear me. It is a pleasure. It is a pleasure to be with you today on this last day of what I believe has been yet another excellent annual POLIS conference. Your discussion on green recovery couldn't be more timely for me, as I will present our strategy on sustainable and smart mobility just next week, making the case exactly this. If we want the sector to achieve 90% reduction in transport-related greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, we need to better organize and develop the mobility of today and that of tomorrow. This alone is justification for green recovery. Our strategy will set out an ambitious pathway with milestones, guiding the sector through the twin green and digital transition and building a resilient transport system for generations to come. Connecting and greening mobility must be the new license for the transport sector to grow. To achieve the transition, we need all transport modes to be sustainable. And as you have realized, we cannot turn our ambitions into reality without cities. So urban mobility will, of course, feature prominently in the strategy. It will also be the topic of new proposals I envisage for the next year. Those of us who live in cities experience somehow a negative impact of transport, such congestion, pollution, road crashes. On the other hand, we are also on the front line of innovative and beneficial mobility services like those from shared economy, which must all be integrated into a multimodal transport system. For me, the way forward is to consolidate a sustainable and safe urban mobility planning framework. We need to focus on people and places, rather than just the movement of vehicles. We need improved mobility management in and around cities, and in particular around the 10T urban nodes. And we need much better data to monitor progress. As the saying goes, if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. As we plan for the future, I would like to see civil society, researchers, economic stakeholders, interest groups, as well as the city dwellers involved with the local and regional authorities. At the same time, we need a better multi-level coordination between cities, countries, commission, for a truly sustainable multimodal mobility. Many of us have seen changes to how we move around in 2020, from contactless payments in public transport to more cycling and walking. Many cities have created new safe spaces to accommodate active mobility. I have heard of determined local leaders in Barcelona, Berlin, Paris that are using the momentum to accelerate a transition to concepts like a 15-minute city, super blocks, and widened pavements. Um, I want also to say a word on Brussels because here, where we are working nowadays, and I have also been impressed by the city of Brussels, where almost 40 kilometers of new cycle lanes have appeared since March. So the momentum for change is here. But the pandemic also increased the perception of the infection risk attached to shared and public mobility. Although I believe and hope that this is only temporary, we need to mitigate that. I know that a lot has been done to ensure that public transport is safe, which is cornerstone in our continuous efforts to transition towards more trains, metros, and trams. Accessible public transport in urban, semi-urban, and rural areas will and must continue to play a key role in connectivity. Now, looking ahead to recovery, the resilience and recovery mechanism will support investment in clean mobility. This is because we recognize that the actions required to decarbonize transport will also boost both recovery and resilience in the transport system. We are making sustainability more EU budget available over the next few years to support green recovery, but this will need to be supplemented with public investment in each member state, region, city, while private investment will remain indispensable. To benefit fully from the various EU funds available to support green recovery, governments must be fully aware of the respective urban mobility investment needs, such as clean bus fleets or recharging and refueling depots. Our funds will be allocated on the basis of national recovery and resilience plans, which are being drafted right now. So now is the time to act. I really expect to see a lot of good projects rolled out in the next 2-3 years, and many of them included in local sustainable urban mobility plans. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are currently at a critical juncture. Cities and regions can help us make a green recovery reality, and everyone is looking at Europe for climate neutral, safe, and smart cities. If we join forces, we will be sure not to disappoint. You have a mission, we also have a mission to put the recovery of cities and the regions on the path to climate neutrality and make us use of any and all support to make that happen. So thank you very much for inviting me. And let's look with optimism towards building better future.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Vălean, and your words will definitely resonate, and we look forward indeed to working together with you towards reaching the ambitious goals that we all share, and I share your optimism as well. And our cities and regions are ambitious and committed indeed when it comes to contributing to the European Green Deal targets, and this morning, the deputy mayors of a first group of leading cities and regions have signed the POLIS Urban Green Dealmakers Pledge, and many more will follow. It is my pleasure now to hand over to Harriët Tiemens, Deputy Mayor for Mobility in Nijmegen and Mobility Chair of the Arnhem-Nijmegen City Region, who will present to you this declaration in which the cities and regions of the POLIS network pledge to become frontrunners for the European climate goals and make the Green Deal the real deal. Over to you, Harriët.
Thank you, Karen, and special thanks to Commissioner Vălean for your kind and inspiring contribution. Unfortunate that we cannot welcome you physically here, but we will make sure we invite you to come visit and cycle with us soon. We're eager to work on projects and eager to see how the Commission supports international sustainable connections with the European train network, but also on inland shipping. As you rightly point out, we all have to do our part to reach our common goal. So at this moment, I would like to present the POLIS pledge just signed by the political group of POLIS in the presence of representatives from the European Commission and our Dutch State Secretary, Stientje van Velden. With the Urban Green Deal Makers Pledge, we want to explicitly state our contribution to Europe's Green Deal on mobility. We, the cities and regions of the POLIS network, pledge to, and then the first slide, become frontrunners for the European climate goals. We know that if everyone is waiting for someone else to take the first step forward, no one will move. We also know that those who step forward must often overcome political backlash, as we all have noticed, I think, fear of change, and behavioral inertia. This is where leadership comes in. We will lead by example, using POLIS for peer support and fast adoption of good practices. The second sheet. We also pledge to commit through planning for safe and sustainable mobility. The third, we pledge to create an open and fair multimodal system. We will adapt our infrastructure and the combined offer of the public and private operators using it to become truly multimodal and intermodal and systematically nudge users towards sustainable choices. The fourth, prioritize affordable, safe, and sustainable modes of transport. We also know that these options, including walking and cycling, are the most sustainable, inclusive, and resilient. We will work for a fair transition, ensuring that those who wish or need to use sustainable modes of transport can do so with safety and convenience. 5, grow sustainable alternatives with public transport and private services. We will work with the private sector to make the sustainable offer grow in capacity and convenience in areas where mass public transport is not the most efficient solution. 6, join forces and unlock our full potential. We will enable innovation, unlocking the potential of our streets by lower speeds, space reallocation for active mobility, and multimodal management. 7, we will promote inclusion as a driver for quality and innovation. 8, we pledge to contribute to the European transport network. We know we must think global and act local, and that active and high-quality urban nodes are indispensable for the success of a European integrated mobility system. As regions, we need this international connectivity. 9, my favorites, clean our fleets and green our streets. We know traffic-generated air pollution has profoundly negative effects on the health of our citizens. We also know the electrification of vehicles holds an important promise. If industry and all governance levels work to get towards zero emission, using power generated by clean sources, and if we avoid, shift, and improve mobility, we will clean the air that we breathe and planting trees in our own streets. And last but not least, share, learn, and build capacity for change. We will implement capacity building programs to empower and enable our staff to pursue these goals and actively contribute to knowledge exchange through POLIS and European projects. This is our side of the deal. At different levels and occasions, we have called on the European Commission and on the member states to make their side of the deal explicit. We must work together to make urban mobility sustainable, become a reality across Europe. We offer our support in reaching results, not only in our areas, but also in the rest of Europe. We pledge to be ready on our side. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriët. And all cities and regions out there, please make sure to join this leading group and sign our POLIS pledge as well. I'm delighted to now introduce our keynote speaker to you, Robin Chase. Robin Chase is a transportation entrepreneur and also co-founder and former CEO of Zipcar, the largest car-sharing company in the world. She's also the co-founder of Viniam, a network company that moves terabytes of data between vehicles and the cloud. And her current passion is working with cities. And in that capacity, she's the founder of NUMO, the New Urban Mobility Alliance, a global alliance that is channeling tech-based disruptions in urban transport to create joyful cities where sustainable and just mobility is the new normal, and of which POLIS is a proud member as well. Robin lectures widely, has been frequently featured in the major media, and has received many awards in the area of innovation, design, and environment. Robin has graduated from Wellesley College and MIT Sloan School of Management, was a Harvard University Fellow, and received an honorary doctorate of design from the Illinois Institute of Technology. So that's quite a mouthful. Robin will share her views on what the city of tomorrow could or should look like. Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from the US, good morning to you, Robin. You are still muted, Robin. If you could unmute yourself. Yes.
I'm going to share my screen. I just first want to say I love the POLIS pledge, and I'm so delighted to be here. I think I've made this big, yes. So just to hear the list of it, I agree with every single point. Today, I feel like I'm talking to all of you professionals in the realm of transport, and I'm wanting to elevate some different types of things than we normally do as we all around the world are going into this moment of post-pandemic. We want to think of it already as post-pandemic, it's not quite, and the stimulus that's happening. So if I look at the trends that are happening today, there's this climate imperative. We know that the world is going to be urbanized and increasingly dense, and we have all these technology advancements. What I feel like I can say with 100% certainty is that the future of transport, therefore, has to be zero emission. And because it's based in these urban areas, it's going to be multimodal. As I think about this move of everyone towards multimodalism, I want to just recognize that it's technology that makes that multimodalism seamless. And I feel like I'm saying things that you know, and I'm going to be elevating different things, but this is just the truth. And I've been thinking about how we express this idea of multimodalism. And so I want to say outright, and I want to say in order of priority, that we need to have a segment of our multimodalism for no and low cost and unlicensed transport. This idea of personal freedom. You can go at the door and get yourself places if you have no money and if you don't have a driver's license. Then, of course, public and shared transport, meaning vehicles that all the way from taxis to large metro systems. I want to put them all in there, that these are shared assets carrying all numbers of people. And then the last component is personal car transport. And I'm putting them in this order because this is a priority order, I would say. And I feel like some of these things have been unspoken for a long time. I want to start today by a sentence my husband gave me, the sentence that infrastructure is destiny. And now that I've understood this sentence, it is so profoundly true. And I want to take you through a little bit of that. I'm an American. In the 1940s, there was this Levitt town that was built that was the beginning of sprawled urban areas. And then there was the interstate highway system that was built to kind of match this coast-to-coast routes. When those pieces of infrastructure were built, with that infrastructure profoundly, with 100% certainty, gave us this destiny of congestion and obesity. I mean, the one plus the other, there was no other direction for that infrastructure to take us. So this is what I mean by infrastructure is destiny. Conversely, in the Netherlands, they've spent 40 years of building cycle-friendly infrastructure building. And if we just look at the kilometers cycled per person between the US and the Netherlands, of course, it's amazing. And if we look at the obesity rates, there's just a dramatic difference. So this idea of infrastructure is destiny is really important. Then I was thinking about our personal infrastructure, like human nature, what is that? And what does that create as a kind of destiny? And specifically, we favor strongly things that are really convenient and easy and economical and cheap. And I would recommend, if you guys haven't read it, Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner in economics, his Thinking Fast and Slow. So we just profoundly, from the get-go, because we are humans, always choose, if we can, the easy and convenient choice. The challenge with that is that we have spent the last 100 years specifically and proactively making personal cars the easy and cheap choice. And we've done this through tax and regulatory infrastructure as well as physical infrastructure. We have chronically underpriced air pollution. You can do that for free. We have underpriced in most locations congestion, curb access where it's scarce. Parking is typically cheap, and even pickup and drop-offs aren't paying. And in many countries, perhaps not in Europe, the user fees for transportation infrastructure investment, as in fuel taxes, have been dramatically underpriced. So this underpricing of market is misaligned with reality. So all of us everywhere overconsume car travel because we have spent 100 years making that the easy, simple thing. And the last and most important piece of infrastructure is, of course, our planet. And just think about this sentence of infrastructure's destiny as applied to our planet. As we have spent, I'd say, the last industrial revolution ignoring the reality of what this means and where we are now on the clock towards our destiny, I feel this unbelievable urgency, as I know that everyone attending this is. So I just want to remind us that infrastructure's destiny and our planetary infrastructure is the most critical of these. So in answer to that, in the transportation realm, people are often saying, okay, electrify everything. And I want to say we can electrify everything and we will still have clean congestion and we will still have enormous access issues. And we will still have children and who are not able to move around freely without the idea that they're going to get killed. So I want to elevate different things today. And if I was thinking about our infrastructure investment priorities, and Adina said this at the very beginning, number one is we should be thinking about people, the movement of people. And this piece that I think has been very under recognized is this need, particularly at this moment, post-pandemic and this economic crisis, but all the time, for low-cost movement, meaning the movement of pedestrians and micromobility, which I'll talk about later. The second order of priority for investment for me would be to really finance and raise up public and shared transportation. In dense urban areas, which we're talking about, it is mandatory. And in less dense areas, public and shared transport will be on demand as we use technology to get there. And then the third thing, of course, is cars. And I want to say, let's think about that as the third priority. Like, we have invested so much in our highways, but we do need to be investing in maintaining those roads, in electrification, yes. And I want to elevate this idea of fees for externality, as I understand will be happening, as has been happening in Europe, a movement, so congestion pricing, the move from fuel-based to distance pricing. And lastly, for cars, reducing the space that we've allocated to them because they have really consumed public and road space and most of our infrastructure, and we need to take back from them to give to others. So I want to make this case now for thinking that electrifying vehicles is the end-all solution to our problems. And so I'm going to be showing a graph, which I'm teeing up here, which is total greenhouse gases per passenger kilometer for vehicles plus fuel plus infrastructure plus operations. And the International Transport Forum just came out with this report. So yes, a complicated chart. But so as I said, it's vehicles, fuel, infrastructure, and operations. And if you look here, per passenger kilometer, here's cars. If we only think about cars and only think about electrifying cars, we are building in the manufacture of those cars and the infrastructure of those cars and the operation. And all of those things are hugely greenhouse gas heavy. Whereas if we look at transit and micromobility, it is a dramatically different footprint. So as we move ourselves towards 2050, where we want to have net zero, thinking that we're just going to electrify cars and then we're going to be done, I just want to say, when I focus on this, we have to reduce this and get away from the idea that cars are the solution. So as I think about that, we want to move, people do love to be autonomous and go around by themselves. So we need to move from single occupancy vehicles to micromobility and e-bikes. And what we've seen in Europe and everywhere is this amazing transformation where people are buying e-bikes and bikes in enormous numbers. I heard a number 2 days ago, which I haven't validated yet, but they said that last year globally 40 million bikes were sold, which was one bike for every 2 cars. So we really are moving on. Then we need to be focusing on this word access. And from the POLIS pledge, we believe mobility must ensure a sustainable and healthy freedom of choice so that people are neither locked into car dependence nor captive clients of public transport. And I thought, wow, that was such a cleanly said piece of these 3 elements that I've been trying to talk about, and that we keep focusing on just 2 of them. So I want to elevate what I think of as the unseen 50%. And this is thinking I've been doing over the last year. And who is this unseen 50%? It's people who don't have driver's licenses. Of course, everyone less than 16, the elderly, 18% of the population are functionally disabled and will never get a driver's license. And there's this rising number of people who've had their licenses revoked for different, for drug or alcohol abuses, for different types of, many different reasons, or people who don't have access to a car. In the US, 8% of households don't have a car. But if we look at that 8%, and I bet it's the same in Europe, when you break it out by skin color, a much larger percent of households that are Black in the US don't have cars. And then we can think of all the households where they have a car, but it's one car. And I want us to remember all those people who are trapped when that car is out. So just this idea that everywhere we really need to be thinking of car access is just not capturing 50% of us. And then of course, the group that doesn't have a lot of money. And post-pandemic, it was large before, and post-pandemic, it is even more people that don't have money. So again, if we think about just electrifying vehicles, we are completely cutting out from access and need all the people who do not have the money for a car. And as was mentioned today, we have this whole issue of I'm afraid to get into public transport. And we've seen in many countries and many cities a rise in car purchase as a response to that. And I feel like, no. Cars are expensive. We don't have the money for that. We need to elevate instead the number of people and places we can move without expensive transport. So in the last 100 years, this is what Boston looked like 100 years ago. You could cross streets to get to the river. And today we've made it safer to cross the ocean than to cross the road. That's what technology and innovation has taken us in the last 100 years. And it is just crazy that as we have filled our cities with cars, it's now, we don't let our 8-year-olds mostly go places, except for, of course, in the Netherlands, which is one of my favorite countries. So I've been wanting to elevate this idea of what I'm calling a freedom network. It's a no low-cost mobility for pedestrians and unlicensed vehicles. And when I say the word unlicensed, what I like about that word is it immediately means that these are going to be slow vehicles and they're going to be light vehicles. And so it's a way that we can bring in, it can be these vehicles, if I think about across densities, this is an idea that works in rural areas, suburban areas, and urban areas, that we need to be able to accommodate pedestrians and unlicensed vehicles. And I want to say, for those of you in Amsterdam, Netherlands, the right 2 photos, that's my mother in a bucket bike at the age of 95 in Amsterdam. And this was another photo from the Netherlands that I loved. So as we know, 50% of trips are less than 3 miles, and they profoundly should be done in this no and low cost mobility way. And of these trips in many, many cities, still these short trips are done by vehicle. And it is just crazy. And we need to convert those trips to shared and micromobility in the long term. And we really need to do that by making car externalities more expensive through use of technology and providing better infrastructure. And to this point, let's talk about jobs. This is a piece of work that was done by the World Resources Institute. It just came out. This is the economic case for greening the global recovery through cities. And if you're thinking, oh, our infrastructure and stimulus money should be going towards jobs, and job creation doesn't necessarily need to be green, this chart, which is from a national basis, so it's European and global numbers, US European global numbers, this chart elevates that green construction retrofits create more jobs than fossil fuel jobs. The clean mobility, EVs, public transport, you produce more jobs than expanding roads or building roads. Same thing with renewable energy. Active transport, 10 to 27 jobs per $1 million spent compared to building roads. The green versus gray infrastructure. All of these things are telling us that if we worry about jobs, we'll be making more jobs by investing in the green and sustainable economy rather than just doing the same old thing. So we really need to be pushing for these things. So I just want to close with and sit on these to remind us that infrastructure is destiny. It just feels so powerful to me that we're about to spend the most money around the world that we have spent in the last decade, and that we will be spending in the next decade. Like right this minute, we're committing this money, and profoundly that money has to be bringing us each and every investment closer to the sustainable and equitable world that we want and need. We don't have a second chance with these stimulus investments. And if you think of the 2050 goals of net zero, what we do right now is meaning whether we're going to get there or not. And so as we're thinking about these infrastructure investments and how we're remanipulating our cities, what we invest today is setting the table for the next 30 years. That is hard infrastructure and hard behaviors, and we're teeing it up. So I just want to close this portion of the conference with this deep reminder that what we do really matters, that we have to be thinking that it's not just all about electrifying cars. And I know that we know this, but I'm hoping that I've made a strong enough argument that you will remember it. And I want to close, and I look forward, and I'll be watching this next panel with practitioners who are telling us, you know, exactly how we're doing those things and how we've got some great examples. So thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Robin, for your inspiring speech, which will certainly be feeding the debate that we are going to have now. And let me just also bring in some news hot off the press from the Brussels region, which is not in the panel, but which is a very active POLIS member as well. The regional government today, this morning, has confirmed a smart kilometer charge based on the principle of the user polluter pays, and it's designed as a tax shift aiming at achieving a substantial modal shift. So I think perfectly aligned also with the points you have been raising in your excellent keynote speech. Now, let me introduce an equally excellent group of panelists to you now. So it is my pleasure to invite to the stage Harriët Tiemens, Deputy Mayor for Mobility from the City of Nijmegen, Mobility Chair of the Arnhem-Nijmegen City Region, Belliard from the City of Paris, where he is Deputy Mayor for Mobility and the Transformation of Urban Space, Mohamed Ridouani, Mayor of my very own hometown, the city of Leuven, Anabel Diaz Calderon, Senior Director and Regional General Manager for Rides EMEA in Uber. And finally, last but not least, Matthew Baldwin, European Coordinator for Road Safety and Sustainable Mobility and Deputy Director General of DG Move at the European Commission. Welcome, a warm welcome to all of you, my dear panelists. So we'll be talking about green recovery, we'll be talking about the Green Deal ambitions, we'll be talking about the role of innovation in all of these ambitions, and cooperation between the public and the private sector. I'm going to launch or ask my colleague to launch a poll question also to the audience, whether they think that the current health crisis will compromise the targets that we have set ourselves to tackle the climate emergency. And it's actually also the question I would like to raise to all of you. Do you think that the current health crisis might be jeopardizing the targets when it comes to climate, the ambitions that we have set ourselves when it comes to climate? And is there something we can do to prevent that from happening as well? Maybe we can start with the European perspective, Matthew. The Green Deal ambitions come from Europe. The green recovery is being led by Europe as well. Are you afraid that our targets, as we had set them in a pre-pandemic world, are being compromised or challenged?
Well, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Great to be with you for the closing session. And I'm sorry I've been able to be with you for more of the conference, but I hear great things. I hear it's been absolutely wonderful. So well done, Karen and team. Look, you've heard the Commissioner, and you also heard President von der Leyen. We will not let the current crisis move away from our targets on the European Green Deal. If you have a look at President von der Leyen's State of the Union speech, she said it very clearly there. We had a choice, if you like. We had some people saying that 55% reductions by 2030 was too much, others saying it wasn't enough. And her point was, we can do that because it's costed and it's planned. And as the Commissioner just said, it's the new license to grow for the transport sector. So I hear across Europe, the sector taking this green challenge and the twinning digital challenge extremely seriously. We're on track. We're on track. And you also heard, many of you will have heard Vice President Timmermans' Chief of Staff saying that we're going with the European Green Deal on steroids this morning. So watch out. It's coming, and we're very, very determined to deliver on it.
And normally steroids are not necessarily a good thing, but in this particular context, I would say, indeed, that's what we need to further accelerate even our ambitions rather than slow them down. Is this also your thinking, Mohamed, from the city of Leuven?
Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Congratulations for this wonderful Congress, even if we have to do it in an online matter. So I think that what Mr. Baldwin is saying is true for in many places and at many levels. For us in Leuven, this COVID crisis is let's say, is also giving steroids to start through, to make sure that our ambitions get even higher. And even during the crisis, I must say that we have been able to implement plans that maybe before would have caused a lot of discussion and a lot of political complications, but we have moved to make our entire city center a bicycle area, where bicycles have, you know, as a car driver, you should stay behind and give access to bicycles and pedestrians. I mean, we have decided this, and there was only, you know, it was a positive vibe, because people come to understand how important it is to move around safely and to have a healthy environment. So I think more than ever, we should take this era as well and turn it into positive action. That's my opinion. And of course, when you say positive action, it means a bit of political courage and taking the measures that are needed.
Sounds good to me. Of course, unfortunately, this health crisis also brings along an economic crisis, and we know that also the private sector is being hit hard in that respect. So I wonder, Anabel, from a private sector industry perspective, is this health crisis jeopardizing the goals you had set yourself in terms of contributing to improving your carbon footprint?
Yeah, well, thank you, Karen. And as everyone else has said, also congratulations. I mean, this event is amazing. I'm sure it's not been easy with the current circumstances. And thank you very much for having us here today. Well, actually, at the risk of repeating, I definitely want to insist. We agree this is really the time to act and actually to accelerate efforts in this transformation. You're right. I mean, the pandemic obviously has been a hit in terms of health and in terms of economic emergency. But at the same time, we have also seen globally that how cities were looking greener and better with less car, less pollution, and less congestion, actually. So I think that is the image that needs to keep guiding us and inspiring us and actually pushing all of us to accelerate our efforts. We just cannot go back to business as usual. And indeed, I think Robin mentioned there is a risk. There is a risk that there is an increased dependency again on private car ownership, but again, that's definitely counterproductive and not the initiatives that we try to support.
So I feel there's a general belief and strong conviction that we should indeed not jeopardize the targets we have set ourselves. And when we look at the different targets and ambitions across our different cities, Harriët, I'm turning to you. Electrification is put forward in the Green Deal as an important priority, even though we know it's not enough to just electrify. We also want to have fewer cars, for example, not just only cleaner cars. But it is important to accelerate the decarbonization of the transport sector. And I know you have positioning yourself as a leader in this area. Can you tell us a bit more about your electromobility activities and ambitions?
Yes, thank you, Karen. We have quite a few examples of a progress towards the Green Deal and transport decarbonization. It's also important we will still need all the support we can get. Of course, we are quite famous for a cycling network, and that's definitely we are developing even further, especially for regional distances. But there's still a lot of mobility that needs something different than a pedaling power. And we have a lot of pedaling power, but we need something different. And so, as you might have seen in some of the Meet the Dutch sessions, we are working hard on combining sustainable energy systems to our mobility systems. This is the case for all the shipping and logistics happening from and to our region. Mobility comes from everywhere, and so we really want to take the lead to providing sustainable decarbonized transport solutions. It's easy to complain about air quality from inland shipping, for instance, but it's also an important economic sector. And what would be better than providing jobs that work on energy technologies for freight? We look for the win-wins, and therefore we are working on energy hubs, not only for inland ships, but also for other modalities. This way we facilitate this decarbonization more strongly. Here we definitely can learn from European partners, as we need all the support we can get to develop these concepts further and find the necessary investments. With COVID-19 and the Green Deal as an economic investment approach, this is the time to move forward. As Diederik Samson said this morning, invest yourself into a green future. I think we have to do that.
Just continuing on the electrification topic a little bit more, Anabel, electrification is also part of your ambitions. Can you tell us a bit more about how you aim to reduce emissions in partnership with cities in the coming period?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think maybe a few of you would be aware, but very recently, actually in September, we launched our global sustainability commitment. And in that, we commit actually that by 2040, we will have a zero emissions platform. So that is a significant challenge ahead. More specifically, actually, or more even closer to home, particularly in Europe, by 2025, we are also committing that 50% of the kilometers that we ride in 7 major European cities will be electrical. So to your question in how we do this. Well, first of all, an important point in general, I think many people have commented about it, but we can't obviously do this alone. The changes are massive, the needed changes are massive, and the challenges are still significant. So we are advocating and looking for partnerships and cooperations with both public and private sectors in order to make this happen. So it's really, really a must. But specifically about us, is what we commit and what we do. There are two major pillars. First of all, we also advocate that the solution is a multimodal, efficient platform that offers consumer different choices and alternatives that are, again, reliable, easy to use, and where consumers have full transparency of the implications in terms of everything: cost, time, convenience, and also environmental footprint. So that's one. The second part is indeed electrifying our own fleet. And in that respect, we're putting together a lot of resources, financial resources, and our own technology and efforts. But there are significant challenges, specifically because, as you probably all know very well, today switching to electrical car is costly for drivers. Making that transition, it has an implication. And there are fundamental changes that need to happen in terms of infrastructure that needs to be developed, and in terms of, for example, an electrical vehicle second-hand market that needs to be also developed, etc., etc. We have our Spark report that we have also launched in September in cooperation actually with many players in the industry, transport and environment, a key enabler of this work. And there we outline the recommendations on how we see this transition happening, and that's the road and the journey we are embarking.
Okay, and indeed we have many of our cities also partnering with you, but generally taking a leading role, including Nijmegen, as we just heard, when it comes to the rollout of electromobility. But clearly it's not enough, and innovation is also not just technology, and we'll come back to that later on. I would like to turn to Paris, because they have invested a lot in this giving the streets back to the people movement, let's say. And even prior to COVID-19, this was already happening. Of course, you have attracted even more attention during the pandemic with the way you have been dealing with it, and have accelerated also the redistribution of urban space during the crisis. Can you tell us a bit more about your concept of the 15-minute city, how you aim also to lock in the benefits that come with this current crisis and the acceleration that we have seen, and how can we move also from temporary interventions to make them permanent forever in favor of sustainable modes, David?
Yes, thank you. It is a very important and crucial question for us now, because you know that all scientists all over the world advise to government and public policy makers to do all what that we can do in order to break the chains of contamination of the COVID-19. And we have put under lockdown here in France, and as is so many countries or states in the world. But some people were still forced to go to work every day, and these people were often forced to take the public transportation like the metro or suburban trains. And in order to protect these essential workers for Paris, but for France as well, as much as possible, we choose to deprive biking lanes really fast in Paris that have the same path that metro lines. The new 60 kilometers of bike lanes are called Corona Piste, and we want to to make these lanes last. We all agree also that we are facing environmental emergency, and that reshaping our cities for more alternative modes has to be done quickly. And we are now to discuss with French government in order to find, a solution, because this we made those lanes so fast that we did not respect the usual administrative agenda, and it was, an exceptional situation, we are facing an emergency, and we have made all these lanes. And now we have to discuss with the governments to find administrative and legal solutions in order to perpetuate this infrastructure. That's a big point, but I am sure we will find a solution, because government wants to find a solution. We want to find a solution. Paris, of course, but all cities we have made this kind of lanes. And just a little quick point about citizens, because in Paris we have a lot of support, of a majority of Parisians. We have been elected on a common platform between Greens and Socialists last July, with a political platform of fighting against climate change, of course, but also rebalance the use of the public space by giving it more to pedestrians and alternative transport mode like cycling, of course. This is for us a democratic validation, and this democratic validation is confirmed by the figures we have with the bicycle lanes, the new one, because during this last year the frequentation, the use of bike lanes in Paris increased by 60%. So we can say that we find, we propose solutions to demands, and that people want to make change now.
It is definitely clear that also bold and beautiful measures can get you re-elected, and you've perfectly illustrated that, and I congratulate you for that, but I also hope together with you that we can lock in to the most the benefits of the current crisis, and have citizens buy in, because I think the fact that we are now in a huge sandbox where we can try out different measures is also a very convincing way to win the hearts and the minds to come back to the opening plenary of our citizens as well, who should not be forgotten. And turning to Leuven, because I know that citizens' involvement is also a core component of your Leuven 2030 climate neutrality ambitions. Can you tell us a bit more about the transport component of Leuven 2030 and what ambitions you have set yourself in decarbonizing the transport sector?
Yes, well, our what we call the Sustainable Mobility Plan is integrated in a broader vision, which we call Leuven 2030, where that's our horizon, where we want to become climate neutral. And to get there, a couple of years ago, we have organized even a new governance model, where we have combined efforts of the city with our citizens, knowledge institutions, NGOs, companies, etc., in a kind of shared decision-making process. And this organization is open for everyone. You can get elected into the board, you're automatically in the General Assembly, and you can co-conduct also the mobility plans. So out of that, a couple of things came out and changed the whole of the outfit and how the city looks like today. We have, because of Leuven 2030, there was a new mobility plan initiated that, in fact, that's number one. You need regulation, like in Paris and in many other places, you need this political courage to implement regulation. But because in Leuven, it came up so bottom up and shared with all these partners in Leuven 2030, there was a huge buy-in. So we have indeed implemented the new mobility plan, which pushes out the cars out of our city center, and which increased the number of bicycles by 40% in only 3 years. Not only among youngsters, but all ages, actually. Secondly, is that you need to invest in comfortable infrastructure for bicycles, pedestrians, and make sure that when you look at the city, you should look at it from a human perspective. And for me, public domain, public space should be aimed at making it comfortable for pedestrians, or for bicycles, for encounter, and it should be healthy in many ways. Now, for us, the challenge is that we need to do this even more integrated. We're now implementing and rolling out what we call MOBI points. So this is multi-modal points. More than 50 are implemented, and more are coming. Where as a user, as an inhabitant or as a visitor, you can choose your mobility. You come with a train, and immediately at the station you can choose shared cars, shared bicycle, or hop on the bus, and everything should be integrated. Now the next challenge is to take it on a larger scale, because Leuven is embedded in a metropolis of 600,000 people that are all oriented to Leuven for education, for sports, for leisure, for healthcare, etc. But most of them come with the car. So that's an issue. So today we have a larger plan where we will have high-speed bicycle lanes, efficient public transport, in order to, by 2030 again, to really double the use of public transport and the bicycle in the region, and decrease by 20% the car usage towards the city of Leuven, because it's not enough to have these plans on a city level. You should take it in a broader perspective. But again, because we have this radical participation approach, we ensure buy-in for these sometimes difficult political measures that you need to take.
That sounds great, and then I can only confirm it's true as well, because it's the city where I live. And yeah, it's, as you say, mobility doesn't stop at the administrative boundaries of a city or even a region. And there's also the incoming commuting traffic that we need to deal with, which is also what Brussels is coping with. Speaking for Brussels, I can also confirm that my colleague Ivo, who is also living in Leuven, has been using his speed pedelec to go all the way from Leuven to Brussels. So also making use of the infrastructure, Mohamed, that you were mentioning in terms of super cycle highways that we are gradually implementing here in Belgium as well. So not just in the Netherlands. So I would like to turn to Mohamed now, to Matthew now. You've been hearing about these local examples, how our cities are contributing to the Green Deal ambitions and targets. You have seen the POLIS pledge. You were there when we were signing it this morning. But we have also heard an outcry from the city saying, we cannot do this alone. We need the other levels of government to support us. We need part of that money also that is now going into the recovery to go to urban mobility, not just to aviation or to the automotive sector. What is your response when you're listening to these different city stories, Matthew?
Well, firstly, Karen, let me say it's really an honor to share this virtual stage with the cities who are doing this stuff, and you and I talk about it, and they're doing it, and it's really a great honor. And thank you also to Mohamed for making sure that the sun has been shining over Leuven the last few weekends. And I can also guarantee you that it's possible to reach Brussels by a regular bicycle and not just by a speed pedelec, Ivo, if you're listening. Look, so what's Europe going to do for us is the cry I hear you saying. And we hear you. As the Commissioner said in her speech, watch this space for the sustainable and smart mobility strategy next week, for the revision of our urban mobility operations at the European level next year. And I think we're very cognizant, Karen, that it's been such a terrible year, 2020, But at the same time, COVID has put cities and this whole thing of sustainable urban mobility in the limelight like never before. And, you know, that old cliche about never wasting a good crisis was never more true. I mean, if you look at the polls on clean air and on pollution, citizens want to see changes in our sustainable urban mobility. And as Adina Vălean said, we need to focus on people and places, not the movement of vehicles. And I was very struck by what Robin had to say, by the way, in terms of underpricing pollution and congestion. And I would add to that list, if I may, road crashes. And in the European Union, we put a number on it in terms of the external cost dimension. It's 1 trillion euros. Extraordinary numbers, 40% of it in the environmental sphere, 30% relating to road congestion, 30% the cost of road crashes. I loved, Robin, your comment that it's safer to cross an ocean than cross the road. What on earth would Christopher Columbus have made of that? Extraordinary. So how can we help specifically? To finally get to your question, Karen, you've heard how committed we are to delivering the European Green Deal. The new kid on the block, and you've heard the Commissioner talk about it, and we've all been talking about it this week, is the Recovery and Resilience Facility, around 700 billion euros. And there's plenty of other sources of financing and funding available. To pick up Robin's comment again about infrastructure being destiny, these funds enable cities to shape your destiny. It's not a given. You can get out there and change it. You need to persuade the member states and through them, the Commission, that these are the right projects. But we've already signaled that sustainable urban mobility is absolutely one of the key topics. The Horizon Cities mission is coming. Still some of the details to be confirmed, but that's talking about setting a target for 100 climate neutral cities by 2030. And I really don't know, finally, what's going to be in the new transport strategy or in the urban mobility planning, but rest assured that we've heard the strong calls for support for public transport and active mobility, for alternatives to our dependence on the private conventionally fueled car. We also, just to pick up what Mohamed was saying, want to develop the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan as a tool. There are lots of ideas about how we might do that, including helping cities really produce absolutely meaningful sums through capacity building for cities that are struggling to do that, or funding of urban mobility data collection. Lots and lots of ways. Very interested to see how Leuven is doing it. And we want to work on these with you. So the door is open, the menu is long, let's get at it.
The door is open and the menu is long. That sounds promising. And indeed, you've mentioned a whole list of things that you are doing and commitments that you share towards us. And we have to say you've been a great ally also in pointing out the opportunities to our cities and regions, and also making sure that we are shaking the national level as well, so that they prioritize investments through the recovery and resilience plans in urban mobility. I have a question from the audience saying that you're often referring to political courage here in the panel, but that it's at the same time challenging for local policymakers to connect to higher goals, whether it's national or European. Maybe I'm asking the wrong cities, I don't know, because you are, of course, engaging in European work, but do you feel that it's hard, Mohamed, David, Harriët, to connect your local ambitions to higher goals on the national and European level? Is this far away for you, or is it close to home for you, Europe or Belgium or the Netherlands or France? Any views from our cities on that? Harriët?
Well, it's all about cooperation. You only can, well, in the political system of the Netherlands, it's you have to work together because a single municipality don't have the investments facilities to make huge steps when we talk about well, bike lanes or do something about your railway station or things that make your mobility more sustainable. So we need the province, we need the national level, and also often the European level to make all that sustainable goals happen in our political system. But it's for the Netherlands, that's rather rare because municipalities don't have a lot of possibilities to connect taxes. So we are very dependent on each other. So we have to stick together in our policy plans, and that's also what we do. Another thing is, in my political life, I see that our inhabitants will always go further than the politicians, than the second chamber on our national level, or the regional level, or council members. They are more conservative than our inhabitants. So I share with Leuven that it's good to ask your inhabitants and to let them participate in your city when it goes to sustainable mobility, because they are more modern than our council members and the decision makers.
David, what about the situation in France? Do you feel that your national government is empowering you, or do you feel they're holding you back and that you're more ambitious than the ambitions you see on the national level? Yeah.
I completely agree with the fact that people want to move more than political elected ones, you know. They are more conservative, and in the turn, I think that we have very ambitious. We are very ambitious to find, you know, a regulation and a frame to develop bikes, mopeds, scooters everywhere in the town, and to connect them with all other transportation, public transportation, with working, with all the mobilities we have, you know. That's the first point. And the second point is that we have make a lot of discussions and a lot of thoughts to find a regulation, because we can't improve and we can't develop this kind of mobility without regulations. We have seen that in 2018, at the peak of the deployment of new companies. We have more than 12 companies on the territory, 12 companies with bikes, free-floating bikes, and so on. And it was literally a chaos. It was way too much. And the micro-mobility solutions was to first, you know, we hacked on, because to develop and to make this a real solutions to answer the big topics, environmental, healthy, and reorganization of space, you know, we had to find a frame, and we have to find a regulation. So we have discussed with government, and we have now a new rule called LUM. It's the name of the law, the new law, and this law allows us to regulate operators in the cities, and we have now just 3 companies for micro mobilities, and it's better because they can find a business model which is okay for us, and for us it's now a tool we have to develop new mobilities and new clean and environmental mobilities to connect with other things, and it's now a part of the policy we have. So yes, we are very ambitious. We are more ambitious than governments, and this ambitious is a way 2 things: intermodality, and regulation.
Yes, indeed. So also the French mobility law is a good example of how it has also empowered the local level to act in the field of new mobility services. And indeed, the whole world has been looking at Paris when it comes to regulating micro mobility. And that brings us actually also nicely to the other topic I wanted to bring up in this plenary, as I announced, and that is the role of innovation, and also the question whether it's needed for that innovation to be regulated, or whether we can just let the market run its course. And I would also like to invite my colleagues to launched a second poll question, which is asking the audience exactly that particular question. And we already heard from Paris now that they believe that regulation is important in the field of innovation. And I would like to turn to Anabel now from Uber. It's no secret, and you still refer to it yourselves as well when you engage in conversations, that Uber entered the market a number of years ago in a very disruptive way. At the same time, we've also seen over the past years that you have invested a lot in dialogue and cooperation and partnerships with cities. So how do you see your role in the urban mobility ecosystem and your position versus other modes? Because our cities don't want your services to compete or undermine public transport, but rather complement it, for example. Where do you see your role in this very complex multimodal ecosystem that we are striving for?
Yes, well, yeah, thank you for the reflection, Karen. Actually, yeah, indeed, we think there has been great progress in the last few years in the understanding of the mobility challenges, and actually how technology and companies like Uber can be an enabler to overcoming these challenges that we have. And it's also been a big learning, to your point, the importance of cooperation actually, and the importance of transparency across the sector and the industry players. Probably this applies to this comment about transparency and cooperation applies to many of the great challenges that we face as a society. I think COVID has given us a few lessons in that respect. So, but more important than obviously the past and what we have learned is the road ahead, to your question, and how we can keep developing the future of mobility, which I think we are repeating a bit, but it's important actually, is based on a multimodal integrated platform solution that is going to provide consumer access to different alternatives that meet their different needs, and will have more transparency in the implication of every choice consumers are doing at any given time. That concept of integration and multimodality is also allowing us to be obviously safer. Technology will help and will keep evolving and contribute to enhance the safety of the platforms, and also obviously the safety of the vehicles that are in the platform will keep improving. And also greener, which again is what we are all commenting about. The cities will get less contaminated and less congested as we enable this efficient mechanism to combine all the modes of transportation. So where Uber places, well, we are part of that multimodal landscape, and yeah, also probably or hopefully an integrating platform in many places. And consumers will use our service as part of a widening mobility offering in the cities, including public transportation. Actually, we have examples in many cities in which public transportation is already incorporated in the platform and in the visibility we provide. And that's definitely the road we want to keep walking or riding, and in cooperation, obviously, with the key cities in Europe and everywhere else.
I would like to look at our cities and see if they maybe want to respond as well, because you're also, as I mentioned to you before we started the debate, welcome to react on what your fellow panelists are saying, or agree or disagree. You're very welcome to say something. I know that Uber has recently also arrived in the Flanders region, so it's still new to Leuven as well. It has been present for a while in Paris. So how do you experience cooperation with these new mobility services that have been entering your city streets over the past years and are private sector driven? Any views on that? Mohamed?
Uber has arrived lately in Leuven, I think last month. So we tried to make arrangements with them because they're welcome, as they are a part of the whole mobility mix. But we want them to do it in a correct way, in a social just way, and in a way that fits with our mobility plans for the future. And I think that if we want to get people out of their personal car, their personal vehicles, comfort is very important. So you need to have the right mobility at the right time and without too much hazard. When it comes to innovation, I want to stress one thing, is that I really believe that in the future, as we see that impact and power and regulation is moving, at the one hand, more and more European, continental, that's very clear, and it's moving locally. So I want to plea really to because I see that Matthew, you are here, you're a strong voice in Europe. Europe has indeed these large funding mechanisms, and they're coming, and we will be ready for them. But many of those budgets get filtered through the different layers between Europe and the regions and cities. So you will have countries where you have different ambitions locally and nationally. Nationally, it always goes through, political give and take, and it takes time, etc. So and I believe that if we want to have Europe moving fast forward, Europe should stress more the importance of its cities and regions and move directly towards them and taking them seriously as a partner. So having more funding directed towards breakthrough programs at a local level, I think will make us move faster, because locally we have these instruments. We can go fast, and we can when you speak about Karen about political courage and leadership, yes, that's key. But in my opinion, you will find it easier locally than national, because there you have a lot of trade-offs. So I believe that we should have even more lighthouse cities and regions, and having them doing what is necessary in terms of mobility and all the other programs that are needed. And you will see that there will be a lot of enthusiasm there and political courage as well.
Matthew, of course, this was straight to you, and I'd be happy to hear your views, but it's something that comes back to what we were discussing earlier, the feeling sometimes that we're being held back rather than empowered by the national level, and the need for this direct channel from cities to Europe without getting the response talk to your member states or subsidiarity. What are your views on that, and how can we have this direct channel even better in place? Or educate our member states?
This is even by Polish standards. I'm discussion, and I thank you for it. I just want to chip in briefly on the previous question, and I think it relates to this, about, are we sending cities over the top at this terrible challenge in terms of political courage needed to deliver things? I think the more we can do together, and I mean cities and member states and the European level in a spirit of partnership to deliver the European Green Deal, the better the easier that challenge becomes. It's not just cities having to deliver things. I would also stress something I hear a lot from different cities, that if you just talk about the fight against climate change, actually realizing the benefits are not felt in cities. It's the co-benefits that from what you deliver when you get sustainable urban mobility, the less congestion, the better clean air, the better road safety, which are the more visible aspects of that. And of course, with that comes the fight against climate challenge. And I think, as Paris said very well, if you're providing really good, fun and sustainable alternatives, then it also becomes easier. It is not just a political equivalent of a hair shirt we're telling citizens to march through because it's good for us. Just on this innovation point and the challenge that Mohamed has thrown down, I get it. I hear you. We do quite a lot through things like the Horizon Europe projects, such as the Civitas family, which has done amazing things with the cities, I think, to generate lots of interesting ideas. POLIS's own projects, I think, are very, very valuable and important. But if you look at what's been laid on the table in terms of the Horizon Europe Cities mission, and that is really bringing a spirit of innovation to financing and to how cities will have access to that. I hear Leuven volunteering perhaps to be one of the 100 climate neutral cities. In fact, if I look at your information, I think you've already volunteered to do it by 2025, I think, which is terrific. Innovation, Karen's a very big and important word, and who could be against it as a principle? And there's a ton of things going on in terms of digitalization, in terms of technological change. For example, just in mobility as a service, there's lots of fascinating things. But I really hope we don't limit innovation just to technology or technological change. Picking up something Robin was pushing, I think electrification and hydrogen fuels are clearly necessary. They're really part of the solution, but they're not the sufficient answer to the solution. We also have to, and I think this is the spirit of so many of the projects you've been doing and the kinds of things that Mohamed is talking about, we've got to innovate around how we view our cities, how we view our streets, how we shape our streets. We have to look at new ways of using our urban space, new ways of getting around. Yes, to Robin, e-bikes and micromobility, but yes, also to cycling and walking. They might not be new, but there's lots of new ways we can use cycling and walking. I don't know how many of you have heard of this, but the cycling and walking buses by which parents accompany their kids to school on bikes or on foot. New ways of doing urban mobility planning, working with the people who live in the cities. My goodness, isn't that a radical notion? I think you call it co-creation. I think that's the first time I've managed to use that word in the right context. And we can do all of that, I hope, in the future under the tried and tested friendly roof of the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan. It means, Karen, bringing in issues such as gender and social exclusion, which have not been high on the wish lists of engineers in building the cities we live in now, and they're going to have to be high on the agenda if we look at the cities of the future, if we look at the challenges that we really face as a society in terms of cities and climate and mobility. And so finally, yes, of course, to technological innovation, but please let's not forget that many of the solutions to today's problems exist already. In fact, many of them are shovel ready. Let's not allow our wish for some sort of futuristic, exciting, innovative future to delay the action we can take now, we must take now, to get climate neutral and livable cities.
And to be fair to Europe as well, Mohamed, let me come back to you, because we cannot talk about innovation without mentioning the fact that you are currently the European capital for innovation, which is a great recognition for Leuven, is a great recognition for small and medium-sized cities as well. And the key message of our own SMC platform, that you don't have to be big to be innovative. But it's also a great recognition of interpreting innovation in the way that Matthew was just saying, that it's not just technological. And I know public-private cooperation, citizens' involvement have been instrumental in getting you that prize. Can you tell us a bit more about why you are the deserved winner of this innovation award?
I object to all this.
Which came along
Karen,
with money.
Are you in a contract for Leuven here?
Well, Karen is one of our well appreciated inhabitants, and she's one of those big pushers for. So
I'm neutral.
Yes, I can confess that she is. We have indeed built up what I call an approach towards change and towards innovation. And we've done it for years now in a very systemic way. I was talking about Leuven 2030, where we've not just built a network, but some kind of governance model where you include, in fact, everyone. And where we ask our inhabitants and scientists and entrepreneurs to collaborate on programs and to have a shared decision-making around different topics. And out of that come amazing projects, amazing ideas that as a city and as a mayor, you have to pick up and you can implement them and make a big impact. And we have shown to, and I'm happy, of course, with the collaboration that we have today with Europe. We have shown that it can work in Leuven and that it can be scaled up. And I believe that's why we have been named European Capital of Innovation for this approach and the results that came out of it in terms of fighting climate change, in terms of urban mobility, fighting poverty, exclusion, all these challenges that we face in our societies today. And to be clear, it was not a remark of criticism. It's just, I want to just stress the fact that in the dynamics that we are today, I believe that indeed the partnership between a Europe that is clearly very ambitious today when it comes to sustainability, just transition in our societies, well, Europe can be sure that it will find partners at the local and regional level as well.
Harriët, you are also investing a lot in local partnerships and in partnerships between different levels of government, but also between the public and the private sector. Could you tell us a bit more about how you're doing this in Nijmegen and in Arnhem?
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Especially on a university campus, we have developed a mechanism to make the best use of the stretched public transport system there. It was before COVID-19, but we have results already. What we did with our campus partners is that we made appointments about when classes in the morning will start. So classes now all start at different times. So not all students use the same bus and train. And so rush hour is much longer now, and it's not so, we had everything. We had cycle rush hour and in the train and in the bus, and everything was filled up because our campus is in a neighborhood, and every day 70,000 workers, students, everything has to go through that neighborhood or the bus or the train to go to the studio or to go to their work. And so with it, with university campus, with all the big institutes over there, we make this kind of appointments, and now we have a whole mobility plan for the future. And our mobility plan, we made an appointment that we will have 20% less cars. And with 20% less cars, all the traffic jams around the campus site will be gone away. So it is very important to work together with the partners in your city. We also have mobility brokers in our region, mobility brokers that helps companies to nudge the employees to use sustainable transport modes. And another important thing is that we think in the concept of hubs. So we have mobility hubs, and then we think, how can you reach that hub? How, what can you combine? So redeveloping our railway station, it's about e-hubs combining, of course, with our regional cycling network, and of course, huge parking facilities for that, for all the bikes. Also the redeveloping of a railway station, we work together with private companies and of course all levels of government we need for all the investments we have to make there.
Yes, that sounds promising, and indeed joining forces is what we need to do. You were referring to the mobility hubs as well, and I see that also nice links in with the comments, many comments I'm trying to process, but I can't read them all because I want to listen to you, coming in also about suburban areas and car dependency being higher in those areas. So it is important indeed to make that link also between the city centers where we have a wide variety of offerings and those more car dependent suburban or even rural areas where it's harder to move away from the car. And this is indeed important. We're slowly coming to the end of our debate. So I would like to throw a closing question to you. It's always difficult when you get these kind of questions. I don't like them too much myself when I'm in a panel. But if you would have to choose your number one mobility priority for the period to come to ensure that our recovery from this current health crisis is indeed a green and sustainable one, what would be your choice? Let me start with David.
Okay, it's a difficult question, but you know, for me and for us, it's a package. We have an objective. We have a goal to make, you know, a zero carbon city, and we want to decarbonate mobility as well. So the package is very simple. In the inner city, of course, because it's different in other part of the territory. But in the inner city, the package is one, walk, of course. Two, second, cycling, because it's a very pertinent mobility, and third, it's a public transport, because we want to invest and we want to support public transport, suburbs of course, but also bus, because with a sanitary crisis, the trust is more for taking a bus than suburbs.
So that's indeed why it's a nasty question, because it's impossible to give one answer as the question is asking you to do. Anabel, from a private sector and industry perspective, what is your number one mobility priority for the coming period?
Yeah, indeed, difficult to choose. I think we all share the ambition of accelerating transformation. We're just talking about innovation, so maybe a reflection there. Obviously, companies like us, innovation is our bread and butter every day. And indeed, I agree, innovation is not only technology, but technology is an important vehicle for innovation and an important vehicle for efficiency improvement in the mobility sector. So in that respect, we need to keep improving the landscape to allow technology to keep progressing and to keep bringing solutions to consumers and to keep improving the society. And we are not probably claiming here the new flashy technology that will come up. There are technologies that are available today, we all know it, and they can make a significant difference. In that respect, electrification is definitely part of the game, and that's an aspect that we need to keep evolving, and the infrastructure and the solutions in this respect need to keep improving.
And innovation is also in the DNA of POLIS and its members, so we'll be happy to continue also the cooperation with the private sector from that perspective, including indeed technological innovation, but not only. Moving on to Matthew. What is your number one mobility priority besides getting the strategy out?
Well, firstly, can I just say this has been such a nice panel. Thank you. A brilliant job, Karen, in chairing it. So much nicer than working to go on a panel. Because I work for the European Commission, I want two little ones, okay? The first is that when we define sustainable urban mobility, let's define it broadly. And please include safety in that. Indeed, I don't think you've got genuine sustainable mobility unless it's safe. That's my first plea. And the second sounds terribly bland. And it's very customary for the Commission in events like this to say, we really want to work with you, but I mean it. It may be more of a threat than a promise. We have to use the new strategy. We have to use what we're going to propose on urban mobility to genuinely build something new. And let's do it together. Let's co-create. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Mohamed.
Well, Matthew, that's noted. And to collaborate with such enthusiastic people. Maybe one thing, Leuven is a growing city in terms of inhabitants, students, workers, etc. And it will be key for us to, our sustainability plans should be embedded in a wider region. So I want to collaborate more with the areas around us so that this agenda of 2030, which is in fact integrate urban plans, mobility, energy plans, etc., housing, it should be one integrated plan, and it should cover the entire region. That's a big goal for me.
Integration is key, and it's a way also to answer to a one priority question, making sure that you still bring everything into the picture. Thank you, Mohamed. And the final words on this closing question go to Harriët, our virtual co-host of this conference. Harriët, what is your number one priority?
Well, I can be brief. From the Green Deal Makers Pledge, it's number 9, clean our fleets and green our streets, to be sure.
That sounds like a wonderful combination indeed. We have been referring to the pledge several times. The link to the pledge is also available in the conference chat. I'm sure you're all very curious and dying to see it and dying to sign it as well. So please have a look. It's principles you cannot disagree with, believe me. So it brings us to the end of this panel discussion. Thank you very much to our panelists, both public, private sector, both local, regional, and European, for your inspiring responses and your excellent interventions. And that is slowly bringing us to the end of our POLIS conference as well. But of course, we need to thank a number of people. And let me thank you, first of all, Harriët, as a virtual co-host, and also give you the floor to say a few words, but it has been a pleasure from our side to join forces with you and your wonderful team. Harriët, over to you.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, we look back at 4 inspiring days of mobility innovation. And what a challenge this has been to organize such an event. On behalf of Arnhem-Nijmegen City Region and the province of Gelderland, we are proud to have been your virtual co-host of this year's POLIS conference. Of course, COVID-19 has been a major challenge, and we would have loved to welcome you here in our region. So we are very glad that you could still visit us at these Meet the Dutch sessions. If you have missed them, make sure you find the links after the conference. And of course, continue to work with us on mobility behavior, cycling, international trains, and inland shipping. We have seen local examples of mobility innovation and sustainability, not just from our region, but from all over Europe, as in this panel as well. It was really very inspiring. We really feel part of a movement, and because not only the local level should take action, we are very happy with the contributions from all types and levels of partners, from the European Commission, from member states, and also from private partners and knowledge institutes. So we see your efforts work towards the same goal, sustainable mobility for all. So congratulations to you and your team at POLIS, Karen. You have done it again. Well, give her a round of applause, I would say. And a virtual hug. Thank you for everything. And we look forward for next year.
Thank you very much, Harriët, and right back at you. Thank you as well to you and your wonderful team, as I just said before. We don't want to look back only, we also want to look ahead, my dear friends, to 2021. And there are no better persons to do that than our very own POLIS president, Mr. Tony Orsulic, who's Vice Mayor for Transport at the City of Gothenburg, and Malin Andersson, Head of Department within the Urban Transport Administration of the City of Gothenburg. Over to you, Tony and Malin.
Thank you. I hope that you all, like me, have found this to be a couple of interesting and inspiring days. The conference had many seminars and talks from people who have had not only great knowledge, but also a great passion for what they do. And being able to take part of that knowledge and that passion have been a great thing. To meet, exchange knowledge and experience and learn from each other, that is the core of the POLIS. Many of our members have signed the pledge. I would like to call for all cities to sign the pledge and to show that it shows the ambition of the cities to work within the EU in the scope of the Green Deal. Cities are the forefront of innovation, and EU should continue to enable innovation and collaboration within the triple helix, though I call for continue and more cooperation. And I would also like to give my sincere thanks to Karen and the whole POLIS team and all the speakers that have shared their insights and experience at the conference, and of course to all of you, the participants of this convention. And to our friends and colleagues in Arnhem-Nijmegen, which have organized this, actually the first virtual POLIS conference, I would like to say Shot wacht and hartelijk dank. Now we are looking forward to the next year, and a year that will be exciting in more ways than one. I will welcome you all to the city of Gothenburg in December of 2021. This is also the year that our city turned 400 years, and I hope that I will see you all then. I will now like to hand over to Malin, our Head of Department of Development and International Affairs at the Urban Transport Administration. Malin, the camera is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony, and Karen, Arnhem-Nijmegen conference team. I did not envy you having to transform a big conference into digital formats during a severe pandemic. But you nailed it. So impressive. Really, really brilliant. Thanks a lot. Thank you, organizers. Thank you, moderators and session planners, for great presentations, great preparations, great performances. Thank you for making these digital days such a positive experience. And it's been absolutely brilliant to meet the Dutch. Thank you. We haven't met in person during these days. We haven't bumped into each other in the hallway with a coffee in one hand and one with a packet of brochures in the other, like we usually do. We talk about changing behaviors. We talk about avoid, shift, clean. But when it comes to limiting our own traveling to conferences, it gets a bit tough, doesn't it? But still, we have met face to face in preparations and in seminar discussions. You did feel close, even at a distance. So the digital format has its benefits, and I do hope this conference have pushed us, POLIS fellows, to reach out towards each other virtually even more. Because as you said, Karen, it's all about sharing. We do face enormous challenges. Collaboration is the key to overcome them. So thank you everybody for all good ideas, all knowledge, all inspiration you have contributed with during this conference. Thank you for sharing insights, successes, and failures. And thank you enormously, Karen, POLIS team, for bringing us together, not only this conference, but also during the 10 past difficult months. Thank you for making sharing possible. Thank you for brave leadership in trying and stressful times. So now I'm extremely excited to welcome all you to my city, Gothenburg, in December 2021. We are really eager to show you our achievements on sustainable mobility and to discuss them with you. So I really hope to see you here next time, next year. And until we meet, onwards and upwards. Thank you.
There's something about the sea, its vastness, its opportunities. The sea has always been the path to what's new. We've set sail to trade, to connect, and others have come to us for the same reasons. It's probably why port cities have that special atmosphere, a fearlessness of the unknown, understanding that although things seldom turn out the way we expect, they usually work out in the end. Gothenburg is that kind of port. It's also Sweden's second largest city and home to about 500,000 people. Here's where Volvo was born. It is Scandinavia's largest port, and it's where you can enjoy the world's best seafood. The story of Gothenburg isn't typically Swedish. The city was literally built by the Dutch, and the British laid the foundations for our industry. Later, Southern Europeans set our manufacturing wheels in motion. And that's how it's been ever since. Our commercial and industrial life, our entire city has flourished through international cooperation and diversity. Today, Gothenburg is the engine of growth in Western Sweden and home to companies from more than 750 different sectors. Some are multinational giants, others are world famous on a more local level. But Gothenburg isn't all business. Gothenburg is also the city of knowledge, of food, culture, innovation. It's the city of events, entertainment, and, of course, it's the city by the sea. Today, Gothenburg is about to take its greatest leap forward in modern times. The city is set to grow by almost a third by end 2035. It will accommodate an additional 150,000 people, will build 80,000 new homes and make room for 80,000 new jobs. Change like that doesn't come for free, and it requires us to think sustainably, because we want to build a city we can be proud to hand down to future generations. That's why we're going to invest in new sustainable technology, expand our public transport infrastructure, and make Gothenburg even greener with more landscaping and parks. We will build a city characterised by culture, education, service and welfare. We aim to close the gap in living conditions and promote a society that respects people's differences. After all, diversity has always been a cornerstone of Gothenburg, and that's something we'd like to see continue. Our business and commerce will also expand, so we are investing in an open and creative corporate climate. History has demonstrated the value of cooperation. So we'll continue to encourage companies and academia to use the city as a testing ground for new ideas. By 2035, Gothenburg will stand strong as a sustainable and close-knit city. But we're going to start our celebrations early, in 2021, when Gothenburg turns 400. "400 years as the city by the sea. The sea which has made us what we are, a sustainable city, open to the world."
Oh my God, doesn't it look appealing to all of you, this lovely city of Gothenburg? People who know me well, they know that I love cities, of course. You don't even have to know me well for that. But people who know me well also know that I love cities by the sea, and Gothenburg is one of them. And I also love our people in Gothenburg, our dear president, and Malin. Isn't she just energizing, positive and sweet? It's always a pleasure to hear her enthusiasm and also her support for the POLIS network. Now, phew, we survived our digital conference. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found our sessions enriching. I do recognize that our social program was limited this year, but look at it on the bright side. You're not as tired as you usually are on the last day of the POLIS conference, which is also the day after the POLIS conference party. Anyway, this year's digital dimension, I have to recognize that did cause some additional stress within our well-oiled POLIS team. And I would like to thank our wonderful colleagues for their hard work and their commitment to also make this digital edition, this special conference edition, a success. They've all been absolute stars, but allow me to put the spotlight even more on two of them. Our events manager, Alexia, and our communications manager, Francesco, who both embarked on a crash course in virtual conference platforms and found a patient and unstoppable way of dealing with all the virtual bugs that crossed our path. And there were quite a few, I can tell you. I hope you're all clapping for them from your respective desks. I see Matthew is. You cannot see him, but I do. A big thank you as well to our friends from Arnhem, Nijmegen, and Gelderland. It was a collective disappointment when we had to take the decision back in summer that this conference had to be a virtual one. But we are delighted you stayed on board, and I'm convinced our participants still got a very good picture of how much your beautiful and innovative region has to offer. Thank you, Harriet, Arnoud, Johan, Frank, Evelien, Leontine, Klimi, Stefan, Chris, and many others for embarking on this conference adventure with us. And thank you to our friends of Gothenburg, to our president. We cannot wait to work with your team on a fantastic 2021 conference. Visit your city in 1 year from now. Celebrate your 400th anniversary. I thought I was old, but you're even older and much older. And have a carefree conference with conference dinners and the best conference party ever. I'm sure you will deliver that to us, and we will be all on the dance floor together. And finally, dear audience, dear members, dear friends, thank you so much for your virtual engagement over the past 4 days. I hope to welcome you all in beautiful and who knows, white Gothenburg next year. And for now, I wish you a happy end to what has been a challenging year for all of us. And I wish you a beautiful new beginning in 2021. Goodbye and good luck, and thank you so much.